The driveway is quiet. Until it isn't. A woman's voice cuts through the air, panicked, desperate, almost collapsing under its own weight, while cold metal cuffs lock into place around her wrists. In that moment, everything fractures. Not just a normal arrest, but the unraveling of a life that once stood on authority, trust, and respect. What unfolds next isn't just captured on bodycam. It's a story that feels almost unreal. A teacher, a student, a secret that refused to stay buried. And as the truth begins to surface, every detail pulls you deeper into something far more disturbing than it first appears. The moment those cuffs tightened around her wrists, the reality hadn't fully set in yet. She kept repeating the same line, over and over, as if saying it enough times could somehow make it true. But investigators weren't standing in that driveway because of a misunderstanding. They were there because, according to them, this case had already crossed a line that couldn't be undone. McKenzie McClean, a 49-year-old teacher, wasn't just anyone. She taught history and economics, subjects built on structure, logic, and authority. The kind of person students are supposed to trust. The kind of person parents believe will guide their children, not harm them. And yet, standing outside her Florida home in handcuffs, everything about that image felt completely inverted. At first, her focus wasn't even on the charges. It shifted almost instantly to something else: her dogs. In the middle of an arrest that could destroy her entire future, her voice cracked with panic over whether they might run out into the street. It was chaotic, almost surreal. Deputies trying to explain the situation, while she desperately tried to control something, anything, in a moment where she had no control at all. And then it happened. The door opened, and just like she feared, one of the dogs bolted. For a few minutes, everything paused. The arrest, the tension, the seriousness of the situation. It all took a back seat to a frantic chase through the neighborhood. Officers spread out, calling after the dog, trying to bring it back safely. Meanwhile, McClean could do nothing but stand there, restrained, watching it unfold. That small, chaotic moment almost felt like a distraction from the weight of what was really happening. Eventually, the dog was secured. The door closed again. And just like that, reality snapped back into place. Because this wasn't about a runaway pet. This was about what investigators say had been happening for months behind closed doors. According to an arrest affidavit from the Seminole County Sheriff's Office, this case traces back to March of 2024. An 18-year-old student, still finishing his senior year, was going through a difficult time. He had reportedly been kicked out of his home and had nowhere to go. No stability. No safety net. Just uncertainty. That's when McClean stepped in, not as a suspect, but as someone offering help. The student already knew her. He was friends with her daughter. He had been to the house before. So when he needed a place to stay, it didn't seem unusual at first. In fact, it probably looked like compassion. A teacher helping someone in need. The kind of story that, on the surface, feels human, even admirable. Investigators say she cleared out a bedroom for him, gave him a place to sleep, a place to exist when he had nowhere else. But what makes this situation more unsettling is what was happening inside that same house. According to reports, her own daughter didn't even have her own room at the time. She was sleeping elsewhere, sharing space with another family member. Yet the student had a room, and that detail alone started to raise questions. Because not long after he moved in, the story takes a turn. The student later told investigators that the dynamic changed quickly. What started as a place of refuge began to feel like something else entirely. He claimed that McClean began making advances toward him, subtle at first, but enough to shift the entire atmosphere of the home. Then came the night that, according to the affidavit, changed everything. It started off casually, nothing dramatic, just another evening inside the house. The student, McClean, and her daughter were in a bedroom, playing video games. A normal setting, something that wouldn't raise suspicion to anyone on the outside. But investigators say that's when the environment shifted. Alcohol was introduced. And not just casually. The affidavit alleges that McClean gave the student around 12 shots of gin, enough to leave him severely intoxicated, enough to impair judgment, awareness, and control. At some point, according to the student, McClean told her daughter to leave the room. And once they were alone, everything escalated. What he described to investigators was something he said he didn't expect, didn't want, and didn't feel he could stop. He claimed she climbed on top of him and initiated sexual contact. He said it didn't last long, that he managed to push her away and tell her it was wrong. But according to his statement, that moment wasn't the end. It was the beginning of something that continued. Over the next 2 months, he told investigators the encounters happened multiple times, somewhere between 5 to 10 instances, and all of it happening under a power dynamic that couldn't be ignored. She wasn't just an adult in the house, she was his teacher. That imbalance changed everything. When detectives later asked him why he didn't leave sooner, his response wasn't anger, it was emotion. He reportedly broke down, explaining that he felt trapped, that if he walked away, he'd be back on the street with nowhere to go, no home, no support, no options. And in that moment, the situation becomes more than just an allegation. It becomes a question of power, vulnerability, and survival. For months, that situation stayed hidden, buried behind routine, silence, and a version of reality that, from the outside, probably looked completely normal. A teacher going to work, a student finishing school, a home that appeared stable. Nothing about it suggested what investigators now claim was happening behind closed doors. But secrets like this don't stay buried forever. Everything began to unravel in December of 2024. That's when the student finally left the house. And this time, he didn't just walk away quietly, he went straight to authorities. But he didn't go alone. He brought someone with him, a friend. And that decision would end up changing everything about this case. Because it wasn't just his word anymore. That friend told detectives she had known about the alleged relationship. Not in vague terms, but in detail. Enough to understand that something wasn't right. Enough to recognize that whatever was happening crossed a line that couldn't be justified. And more importantly, she had proof. Text messages. Messages that investigators say came directly from McClean herself. Messages that didn't just hint at something inappropriate, but appeared to acknowledge it. In one exchange, when confronted about the situation, she allegedly tried to explain her role. Not by denying it, but by shifting how it started. According to the affidavit, she wrote that she was fully aware she was the adult, and that she intentionally never initiated anything. But then came the line that investigators focused on. She admitted that she gave in when someone else initiates, and that single statement changed the entire tone of the case. Because it wasn't a denial, it was an explanation. In another message, she reportedly went even further, saying she told herself each time it wouldn't happen again, that she would say no, but then let it happen anyway. A pattern, repeated, acknowledged, and documented. And at that point, the narrative investigators were building started to solidify. This wasn't just an allegation anymore. It was a timeline supported by statements, behavior, and digital evidence. But the situation became even more serious, because according to the same friend, there was another layer, one that added a completely different charge to the case. She told detectives that McClean had allegedly given her Adderall, a controlled substance, something that, if proven, expands the case beyond misconduct into criminal distribution. That detail mattered, because it showed a broader pattern of decision-making that investigators believed wasn't isolated. By February, enough had been gathered. A judge reviewed the case, and an arrest warrant was signed. On February 17th, deputies arrived at McClean's home in Lake Mary, and everything that had been building quietly behind the scenes suddenly became very public. The bodycam footage captures it all: the confusion, the denial, the moments where reality starts catching up in real time. She asks what the warrant is for. She's told, multiple counts of sex offense by an authority figure, and distribution of a controlled substance. And still, she insists she didn't do anything. But what makes the scene more unsettling isn't just what's said, it's what's felt. Because as deputies move through the process, explaining procedures, collecting belongings, preparing her for transport, there's a shift in tone. The weight of it all starts to settle in. Not loudly, not dramatically, but in small, quiet realizations. At one point, an officer tries to reassure her, telling her that just because she's being arrested doesn't automatically define who she is. And her response is immediate. Not defensive, not angry, just resigned. She says it will destroy her life, even if the charges don't stick, because she's a teacher. And in that moment, there's an understanding that some consequences begin long before a courtroom ever decides anything. Reputation, trust, identity. Those things don't wait for verdicts. They collapse the second something like this comes to light. Eventually, everything is finalized. Her belongings are handled. Her phone is taken as evidence. She's placed in the back of a patrol car, and within minutes, the door closes, cutting off everything familiar. A 15-minute drive stands between her and a completely different reality. Booking, charges, court, and a future that now looks nothing like it did just hours earlier. According to records, her bond was later set at $35,000. She posted it. She's currently out of custody, but the case is far from over. A court date has already been scheduled, and what happens next will ultimately determine how this story ends. But here's the part that lingers. Because beyond the footage, beyond the statements, beyond the legal process, this case forces a deeper question about power, about trust, about what happens when someone placed in a position of authority crosses a line that was never supposed to be touched. And once that line is crossed, there's no clean way back. If you've made it this far, you already know. This isn't the kind of story you just forget. So tell me what you think. Do you believe the evidence paints a clear picture? Or is there more to this that hasn't come out yet? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if you want more real cases broken down like this, make sure you like, share, and subscribe.